Hey, so I've done a video on my pipes, my tobacco, and my kind of story with that. But, and in some ways, you know, just the pipe is sort of iconic, having to do with me. Like, that's a lot of times what people recognize. But there is actually one other thing that's similar and has had at least as big an impact on sort of my life and my addictions and whatnot, which is tea. Now, unfortunately, I don't have my iconic blue cup. It's over there brewing, but this is, right now at least, and most of the time, my secondary cup. I'm always brewing, well, I always have 2 cups of tea going, basically, because I must have tea all the time. Now, the story with me and tea is about the same time as smoking, to tell you the truth. I start, you know, I mean, look, not exactly, because I drank tea every now and then. You know, you go to a Chinese restaurant, you order tea, because it's the thing you order there, right? Every now and then, if I was sick or something, I would drink tea. But when I was a kid, tea was not really a big deal for me. It was always other things, and I wasn't into coffee either at that point. Someday I'll... See, my life with coffee has degraded, but with everything. I'm less and less interested in the good stuff, you know, and more into just, hey, whatever gets me through. And coffee is actually similarly related to tea, so maybe I'll talk about that in this as well. It's a moth, but it's outside. Early on, when I first moved into a place with my first girlfriend, I'm not sure why, but I started buying more teas. Starting out with herbal infusions, where, you know, oh, I kind of like, you know, the lemon zinger and stuff like that. I don't know how I'd run into them or if she introduced me more into that. But I mean, I went whole hog in terms of moving from drinking water all the time, which is what I was drinking before, to more and more starting to drink teas. But tea and Earl Grey was the other that I was very much into. But the teas were a treat, just like cigars were at that age. It wasn't until a few years later, around 24, 25, when when I moved in with my first wife, that I really started drinking teas and or coffees. And early on in our relationship, we went to a coffee house fairly often to hang out also at places like Perkins or Denny's and drink coffee all night, just hanging out with her friends. But also at the coffee houses, getting better coffees, trading discussions of, I would go on poetry night and trade a poem for a cup of coffee. That was the deal that they had. They would give you 1 free cup of coffee if you read a poem. And so, yeah, you know, I'm like, well, I can't give up free stuff, so I would write things. And, you know, it was kind of enjoyable. I was never serious about poetry. It was basically I would scratch something out while I was there or whatever. That was kind of humorous in order to get myself my free cup of coffee. And yeah, you know, it was cool. I wasn't really into poetry night, but I don't know. I'm not quite sure why we went, to tell you the truth. Except that that was our regular hangout. But also I would go there regularly and we drink coffee. Eventually we started playing Magic there and whatnot. As we started seeing other people bring their cards, it was like, yeah, why not? I would play Go there and stuff along those lines. But it just became this. I almost constantly had either coffee or tea at hand, and that has continued since that time. Somehow I switched over from drinking water most of the time to drinking coffee or tea and having a pipe most of the time. Now, like I said, when I started off, I started off with good coffees that I would grind myself and still make with a drip because I preferred that. Although I had an espresso pot, a little old one that I would use a lot for the coffee. For tea, you know, sometimes I would pick stuff up that was fancier or whatever, loose teas and use them in a ball. But for the most part, I was relying on cheaper teas because they were my regular drink. The coffee was a treat. I didn't mind spending more for that. Every now and then, I would still do a decent tea or an herbal infusion as some kind of treat. But honestly, the cost of a cup of tea, of a single tea bag, is so fucking cheap if you buy the cheapest brands. And, you know, I experimented with things like white teas, which are ridiculously expensive but very, very tasty. But they could never be my everyday tea. Unlike grinding your own coffee beans, when you look at the the differential between cheap coffee and expensive coffee was about twice as much, you know. I tended to have cheap coffee around 2 at one point or another. That's happened more recently. Basically, when I moved away from my first wife, when she kicked me out, I was like, well, I like coffee, but I don't want to go through all that hassle. I don't have a grinder, and I'm cheap. What happens if I just buy, you know, the store brand coffees? And yeah, you know, they're okay. They're okay. And honestly, if you give up your more expensive tastes, but still treat something kind of as a treat, it can be fairly decent. The difference, you know, this is one of the things is, if you completely give up your expensive habits and start treating more moderate ones as treats, they become that. Everything that we do is a matter of habit and whatnot. So I'm gonna grab the camera and show you what the hell I have. First of all, there's the teacup. And yeah, I have a bag in it. These are especially interesting. These are the best deal that I have. And you would think, whoa, Tetley. Tetley's like, you know, a decent brand. Turns out that I can get 2 full mugs out of one bag for this. And it ends up cheaper than my sort of standard, which is just a store brand black tea, 100 count. They've gotten kind of expensive. They're getting up to like 3 or 4 cents. It used to be, you know, they ran right around a penny or 2 a bag, but the price over the past 20 years or so has gone up. Every now and then Red Rose is on sale. I pick that up. I'm not sure which one I like better. Used to be when I was first into
well, first started drinking tea a lot. I went with the cheap stuff. My first wife went with the Red Rose. And we would kind of make fun of my cheap stuff because it kind of had a fishy taste. This brand, not so much, but the brand that I was getting did. And it's also got a harshness to it that the Red Rose doesn't. The Red Rose is a lot milder. But I kind of like that harshness, so I'm okay with either. But these guys, they come in this little foil thing. There's I think there's an 80 count on them. They're about $1 more than these, but I get two full cups out of each one. The first cup is very strong. The second cup is a little weaker, but you can kind of enjoy the flavor more. And this is why people don't just do what I do, which is allow it to steep for, however long it sits in the cup until I transfer it to the next cup, which is sometimes hours. Here's the coffee I've been sticking with, store brand. I like French roast taste. It adds a little bit to it. I like a darker French roast than this, but whatever. This is cheaper, and they don't have a real dark roast of any kind like an Italiano or anything in the size cans that I get. Prices have gone up enough that, and my stomach is having trouble, that I've really cut way back on coffee. I used to drink, well, I would basically make a full pot of coffee and, put it in the thermos for the first half of a day and then switch to tea. Now I'm almost purely on tea. I had 2 of these. I found this in a free library type thing or a free pantry or whatever, and was like, oh, I've never tried that brand. Let me try it. It's really good. It's a flavored tea, not an herbal. Often flavored teas don't impress me. These have very, very strong flavor. I can't find them. They're not at the store I go to, which kind of surprised me. I went looking for them because I'm like, wow, those are a nice treat. I have tons and tons of Celestial seasonings. My wife was picking these up, and so we're way overstocked on those. Sometimes I find things and pick them up as well. This, I should know better. I had bought this before. There was no lemon zinger available, or this was cheaper, and I bought this, and it just doesn't do it. The lemon zinger is a little weak. I was hoping this would be stronger. I have some of these others, like this. It needs a lot of honey to make it work at all. This is like a raspberry zinger or something, yeah. Which I also like. The zingers have, I don't know, rose hips in them, so they end up with kind of a nice little, I don't know, zing for your throat. And sometimes they're just pleasant to drink. Again, though, whenever you get to something like that, you're paying, over a dime a cup, which to me is just like, I can't drink that regularly. Now, I don't figure out my coffee costs. I'm pretty sure back when I did it, decent coffee, it was probably over a dime a cup. But yeah, I didn't. Well, yeah, I did. I used to make coffee about once a day. I'd make a pot and then have another pot, much as I do now. And you see, we had some other things like hot cocoa. These here. Every now and then, I'll drink something like that. For hot cocoa, I mix it with I mix it in with milk. If I don't have milk, I add some butter to it in order to give it a little bit more creaminess. And that's, I don't know. I guess that's about it for these, but I just wanted to kind of touch on it. If I'm drinking tea, though, it's probably either, it's one of the 3. It's either the Tetley, which I try to do as much as possible because it's the cheapest, because I get 45 cents. It's about 2.5 cents a bag now. These are running probably closer to 4 cents a bag, 3 to 4 cents a bag. So they're a little bit more expensive, and I think the Tetley tastes better. So I'm like, well, even on the second brewing, different taste better. But yeah, so I'm like, well, that's great. Anyway, that's about it on what I tend to drink most of the time. And I guess I'll let you go.